In this video, we're going to teach you about 3D printing technology. What is a 3D printer? What is 3D printing? How do 3D printers work? Some of the applications 3D printers are used in, some of the materials that are used in 3D printing. So hopefully by the end of this video, you have a clear understanding of what 3D printing technology is all about. So the first thing is, what is 3D printing? It is a process to make a real-life tangible object. It's taking your idea and make it become a reality. And you do that by a computer model. You design your concept on a computer and send it to the 3D printer, and the 3D printer makes that model. 3D printing is used mostly in two areas, and that is product development and prototyping. So a lot of companies are using 3D printers to make things. Example is this car. You can create now your objects in computers and 3D print them at a very low cost without going through a whole manufacturing process that could take hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what exactly is a 3D printer? A 3D printer is a machine that prints in 3 axes. Unlike a 2D printer, which prints paper or pictures, they only have a flat surface. But if you could take that picture or that text or whatever it is on that piece of paper and pull it up, that's your third dimension. And that's kind of how 3D printers work. They have an X, a Y, and a Z axis for most 3D printers. And in this case, we're going to talk about fused filament fabrication in this video. That's FFF for short. So the 3D printer has a left and a right axis, which is your X. It has a front and back, which is Y, and it had a Z, which is up and down. Now, a 3D printer also has an extruder called the print head. Some people call it extruder, print head. Those terms can be interchanged. It takes the plastic and feeds it in and squeezes it out onto a print surface called the bed, and this collects the material. So how does the 3D printing process actually work? First, you have to have a computer model. And there are many different types of ways you can create a model. We call that CAD, using CAD software, computer-aided design software, to do that. But for the most part, you have to create that in some type of computer program. You either do it, or you have someone else do it, or you can actually download those off the internet, but it has to go into the computer. Once that object is into the computer, you now have to convert it over to the 3D printer for it to read. So this process is called slicing. It basically takes that model that you have and converts it into individual layers, and it creates it into a code. That code then is given to the 3D printer, and then your object is made from that. So the way the 3D printer actually builds it is by taking those layers one upon another and joining them together. This is called additive manufacturing, where products or material are actually fused together and melted together to join into one object at the end. Some of the applications for 3D printing. Architecture. A lot of architect firms now are getting into 3D printing. And even though you do have 3D renderings on a computer that you can show people, how awesome it is to hand someone a 3D model of their concept. In engineering and automotive and aerospace, that's another industry that's using 3D printers, such as this jet engine, this compression engine from GE. They put this model out for people to be able to 3D print. And this was done in different pieces, as you can see. This is actually the inside of a compression engine. So the jewelry and fashion industry are using 3D printers now. A lot of artists will be able to create their concepts and their ideas to use in movie props, but also businesses like these rings. You can model things at such an intricate detail with 3D printers, and you can have these things, these plastic models, converted over to metal, and you can sell these as a business. So the health and medical industry are really using 3D printers now. Here's an example of a prosthetic. This prosthetic is used for someone who's missing fingers. And what's crazy about this, the cost to be able to 3D print a prosthetic now is so much lower than what it used to be. Now, it is disruptive technology, which means it could interrupt some of the businesses that are used to using old methods, but if they adapt, they can now use 3D printing technology for these types of things in the health and medical world. So in the hobby industry, they're making model trains, Lego pieces, figurines, different gaming pieces. And here's an example of a Joe Burrow statue. This is something I 3D modeled, Go Tigers, when Joe Burrow won the Heisman Trophy. So some of the materials in 3D printing. Now, the 3D printers we're talking about, the FFS, fused filament fabrication, is plastic for the most part. There are many different types, but the main two are PLA and ABS. PLA is a biodegradable plastic. It's a lot safer to use. It doesn't have any odor. ABS, which is the Legos, that's what Legos are made from, does have somewhat of an odor and is a bit trickier to 3D print. Now, each has their own uses. ABS is a little bit stronger than PLA, but to each his own. So with 3D printing, you need to understand 3D modeling. That basically means how to create something on a computer that's a digital 3D model. Now for 3D printing, it is a special type of 3D model. And with 3D printing and 3D modeling together, putting these together can open you up to a wide world. But even if you left off 3D printing, 3D model itself can give you things like engineering and architecture, game design, graphic design, gaming, you name it. 3D modeling can just itself can open you up to a world of options. But now you combine it with 3D printing, and now you can do so much more with it. Create a business, learning and education, or create stuff for hobby. And that's the end of this video, an introduction to 3D printing.